Welcome to the Existential Empath Podcast. My name is Tanya, and I am an intuitive empath. My intention is to share valuable tips, tools, and techniques that I have learned so you can tap into your own inner healer naturally and intuitively. Welcome back, everyone. Today I have guest Danielle Matthews. Danielle is a holistic post-traumatic growth specialist with an extremely inspiring story that we're going to hear today. At the age of 23, Danielle was hit by a drunk driver and sustained a severe traumatic brain injury. The medical world said there was no hope of recovery and told her to accept this life as her new normal. Although her body was physically impaired, her spirit was strong, and she refused to believe their diagnoses. Her mind was determined to recover, and that she did. And now she's here today to share her powerful story with all of us on how she turned her pain into her power. Welcome, Danielle. It's such a pleasure to have you on the show today.
Oh, thanks for having me on, Tanya.
So we're going to talk about, is healing really all in our head? And we're going to hear your inspiring story. And so your story is filled with inspiration, hope, and awakening to the abilities we all have within inside of us to turn our pain into power. And this is exactly what I talk about on my podcast, is how we can go within to find that inner spark to heal. And so, Danielle, you teach others how to overcome the challenges of the mind so that they can stand in their power to heal too. And so I want to start off with your story. I've heard bits and pieces of your story, but I would love to hear your story in its entirety, because just the bits and pieces that I heard were extremely inspiring. So could we start off with that?
Yeah, I'm happy to dive in. I'll take you to the moment where everything in my life changed. So I was, I graduated college. I had a degree in biology. I was teaching. I was doing Teach for America for 2 years. Loving what I was doing. And the summer after my second year of teaching, I was hit by a drunk driver. I was in a car. It was like 7 o'clock in the morning. Crazy to think, but
wow.
He passed out and came into my lane and just hit my car head on. So the car, thankfully, took the impact in the way it's intended to. It was headlight to headlight. So the whole thing crunched in, airbags went off, all of that. And amazingly, I walked out of the car. Like, there was a group of runners that were there. So they were able to come over and kind of help me out. But wow. I looked okay. And when the medics came on site, they kind of gave me a once over and they said, everything looks okay here. Like, I had bruises and burns that were already showing from the airbags and stuff. And I kept saying to them, well, I feel really out of it. And they said, oh, you're just in shock. Like, it was kind of just, this write-off of it. And my parents came to the scene and my mom was like, no, something's wrong with her. And so they took me to like an urgent care. The woman there said the same thing. No, you're just in shock. All it is shock. And I was like, if that's what you say, I've never
I feel differently. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, I couldn't, I remember one of the runners handing me her phone saying like, well, why don't you call your parents, call somebody to come and let them know what happened. And I looked at her phone and I couldn't figure out how to use it. And it wasn't because like she had an Android and I'm used to an iPhone. I literally was like, I don't know what to do. And so I handed the phone back to her and I said, can you call? And she said, sure. And, the phone number had been my phone number since I was a little kid. So the phone number came out.
You remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. But it was like little things like that were a clear indicator that something was wrong with my brain, but no one was picking it up. And about a week later, I was in so much pain. I felt like someone had a vice grip on my head. I wasn't able to handle any sort of light. Like, it felt like someone was shining a flashlight in my eye when I just saw natural light. Noise was coming in. It felt like everyone was just screaming at me. Like, I could hear the air conditioner as well as like the knife and fork on the plate and the conversation going on.
My world is a clear audience.
There you go. Too much going on.
I got to turn the volume down.
Yeah, exactly. So we got in with my primary care provider and he's the one that said, no, something's happened with your brain. You need to see a neurologist, go to a specialist. And ultimately I get in and then I get the diagnosis of a mild traumatic brain injury, which we were joking before the call. What an oxymoron, because there was nothing mild about it. What resulted was that I couldn't go back to work. I attempted. But I couldn't handle the input. I also couldn't drive. I would get completely overwhelmed trying to drive. And so I ended up losing my job. I ended up having to kind of give up my independence. I was living out in Colorado at the time. Loved it.
Beautiful.
But had to move back in with my parents, and it was just full-time focus on trying to get me healthy. And the Western medicine kind of perspective was sit, there's nothing you can do, you know, it's going to heal when it's going to heal. They said it might take 3 months, then they said 6. And then at my 1-year appointment, my neurologist said to me, with this type of injury, Danielle, your body's done all the healing it will do. And this is just your new normal, and you need to adjust your life around your symptoms. And I was 23 when my accident happened, 24 when I'm sitting in this office. And I remember thinking to myself, like, you're fired. Like, there's no way.
I say that, not my reality. Yeah.
I refuse to accept that. And I just, like, I was flabbergasted that he would say something like that to me. You know, I was reading a book called The Brain That Changed Itself, talking about neuroplasticity. And I thought, if it's not going to heal, at least the brain could make new connections, you know? And I said this to him, and he said, oh, that's just a theory. It's not proven. And I was
Gosh,
like,
and you're 24 telling that. You were young to be able to
Yeah.
tune into this. It's almost like your story kind of reminds me of a near-death experience. There were many, I've had a few on my show, and they will have their experience and then come back and have these enhanced kind of abilities tuning into things. So it kind of resembles that a little bit.
Yeah, you know, and as it's continued my healing, yes, so much has opened up. But I was still very much like, I had a degree in biology from the University of Virginia. That's what I studied. So and I'd always been fascinated by the brain. I took a lot of neuroscience classes. So
No coincidence, you know, there.
Yeah, right. So I had some background to go on. But it was interesting because that moment, you know, you can look back in life and there's like these inflection points where something occurs and it shifts the trajectory of your life. And that conversation with him shifted me in that I didn't accept what he was saying. There was no way I was going to go, okay, this is my life, and just kind of deal with it. But what it did was it made me go, well, what are you going to do about it, Danielle? Because your emotions are a mess. Like, I was severely depressed. I had a ton of anxiety. I was dealing with PTSD, and I was miserable. And I thought, okay, if the physical symptoms aren't yet healed, and, you know, he says they're forever. I don't think so, but, you know, they're not gone. They're maybe not going anywhere anytime soon. What can I do with the aspect that I can control? The stuff that's in my mind, my thoughts, my emotions. And that's what really kickstarted me into asking deeper questions, realizing the depth of power that I have within me, what I'm connected to, and, you know, my ability to actually transform my world from the inside out.
Yeah.
And that has changed every aspect of who I am. You know?
I bet.
Yeah.
It's almost like you got jumper cables to a new life, right? You're just like, you know,
yes. It's just painful to go through. It's like, you know, people talk about an ego death. I had never heard of that term, but I'm like, that's for sure what I went through, because this idea of who I was, you know, in my own mind, prior to my accident, I was very involved with my ego. It was like who I showed up in the world as, and, you know, I was defining myself by my friends and the fact that I snowboarded and I taught and I did good things in my community, and, you know, I got good grades and whatever. That was like the Danielle before, and all of that fell away, and I felt so empty, you know, because it was like, well, who am I if I'm not all those things?
Yeah.
I had no context for anything deeper, greater, nothing. And that's what was a really dark time for me. But then I started to question, well, it was like, okay, well, if the goal in life is to be happy, that's kind of what I came down to. Like, I want to enjoy my day. I would like to have joy and happiness in my day. So how can I do that? And I realized this: the moment I think about my past, I get really depressed. And the moment I think about my future, even like 2 hours from now future, like, I get anxious because I don't know what I'm going to be able to handle.
Yeah.
And I said, you're going to have to just be present, Danielle.
Which is hard.
And to stay in the present moment, it's like, you know, every spiritual practice, right, tells you we'll be present. And it's like, by force, I had to take myself into the present moment, like by necessity. And it was amazing, because when I was in the present moment, it's like, okay, well, what could I do right now that would make me happy? And for a long time, I just kept thinking about all the stuff I couldn't do. But then eventually it was like, well, you could go on a walk, you know, you could pet the dog, you could call your grandparents, You could cook a new meal, you could find a recipe, but there were little things that I started to be able to do. And then okay, I'll go do that. And then I had fun. And it was like positive reinforcement, right?
Yeah.
Like, okay, do that again. And little by little, I started to shift my world. And this was one of the biggest things, as I started to monitor my thoughts and to realize like how crazy they were. I'm like, man, if I was saying this stuff out loud or to other people, like you think I was crazy or very mean.
Yeah, it's like that inner dialogue can be the worst bully, right?
Oh, it can be so wicked.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started to go, okay, like this is not a helpful thought. Goodbye. Like I started to realize that, what are they called? Headlamps. You know those headlamps when you go camping and you got like a light here and like wherever you look, it shines. I started to realize that like, I was constantly shining my light on my thoughts, which were the most unhelpful things. And so it's like, I just stopped looking at them, and I took the light and I realized, wow, maybe I just take this thing off and I shine it over here. And rather than, at the craziness that's going on in my brain, and I could just redirect my focus, changes everything, because all of a sudden, like you realize like, holy cow, I'm not my thoughts. Like I actually can find peace amidst whatever craziness is going on in my thoughts.
Yeah. And that's a powerful place to be, right?
Oh, that's
especially in this day and age.
Yeah. I think it's the place, and I believe that when this, as I started to kind of learn, and I feel honestly through necessity figured out, like, okay, well now I can choose to maybe insert a new thought or insert a different way. Like if my initial response is anger to a situation or frustration, rather than like before, I would let that just kind of run me wild and I would run with it.
Like a kite in a hurricane. That's what I call it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That kite's going nuts.
Around.
So then I started to go, okay, anger's here. I'm not going to pay attention to it. Like it can just be over here. I'm not going to like push it down, but I'm just going to not engage fully with it. And instead, I'm going to choose to be open. I'm going to choose to be patient. I'm going to choose a different response to have to the thing external. And so profound, like my world changed. And I'm like, why doesn't everybody know this?
So when you started doing this, how did your symptoms shift? What happened with your, all of the overwhelming symptoms you were experiencing?
My physical symptoms were still there, but my emotional, just balance. It's like the depression just went away. The anxiety just went away. I had this feeling of peace that like welled up inside of me, and it's never left. And I'm so grateful because of going through that and realizing, well, that was there all along. I just never accessed it. And now I'm accessing it and I'm bringing it to the forefront always. It's a beautiful space that resides within me, and it resides within everyone. And I started to do meditation. I started to do a guided meditation and yoga nidra. My mom introduced it to me. Oh my gosh, amazing. So we did it originally because my brain wouldn't turn off at night.
Yeah.
So like I couldn't fall asleep, and yoga nidra like follows, the wavelengths down into the delta wave. So we thought, well, maybe we'll retrain my brain how to sleep. And in doing the yoga nidra, I slept through the night, but then I started to do it like when I felt a migraine coming on, and it started to like negate some of these physical symptoms that I was having. So I was doing it daily, not realizing, the power that a practice like that has. And like that the yogis designed it very intentionally to help you access the space behind the thoughts, to come into this peaceful space that's always there, to literally sit with the divine and to be able to just rest back in it, to totally recharge yourself, to totally allow for massive healing to happen in your being. And I believe in doing those things, my vibration changed. I was all of a sudden, I had been in I'd been in a very much of a victim mentality. I was angry. I was frustrated. I felt like life wasn't fair. But in doing these things, all of a sudden I became happy, very grateful. I was having joy in my day. And we attract
timelines. Yeah.
Yes. And like the answer then to my physical problems dropped in, and it came through a phone call.
That's amazing. And it's like, I, for more than 15 years, I worked in trauma. So I wasn't necessarily physically experiencing the trauma, but I was energetically experiencing the trauma. So my fight, flight, or freeze response was on full throttle, similar to what you experienced the trauma. And you said my brain had to be retrained to fall asleep. I was the same way. My brain had to be retrained to fall asleep. My nervous system was so in tune to being in a trauma state. Bells, whistles, all the things that go off in a hospital, just very alarming and very loud. And I could, I did not experience an accident like you did. However, being empathic and intuitive, I was experiencing the accidents that every single patient that came into the hospital was experiencing. And I, like yourself, had to be guided through my own intuition on how to calm the nervous system, how to reset and retrain that into that rest and digest. And yoga nidra is an amazing practice. I was obsessed with yoga when I was working in the hospital. It was like I couldn't get there fast enough. And I had my doctors going, I had my, some of the nursing staff going. And I'm telling you, Shavasana, it's at the very end where you just lay there. I'm like, that's my favorite pose is Shavasana. I just want to lay here. But that's what my body was telling me I needed rest. And it sounds like too, when we go through trauma on an energetic level, our soul spirit wants to shoot out of our physical body. Many times when I'm working with people, I've got to call them back in. It's like, oh no, you're up here hanging out. You don't want to experience the pain. We've got to call you back in to be able to transmute this. And so oftentimes we're guided to do that. And it sounds like you were guided to do that through both yoga nidra and meditation, which is amazing. You were able to do that through your own, journey.
Yeah, it's incredible. I think when you're open, the universe is always giving you what you need. Like it's right there. But if you've got blinders on, which for the first year of my accident, I had major blinders on. I was like, I'm getting back to my life. Don't talk to me about anything else. I'm like, I was terrible. And I was just resisting life. I remember my therapist said to me, Danielle, there is a rip current in your life right now. And he said, you are treading water. And if you don't stop, you're going to drown. He said, you need to just release control and trust that you're being taken somewhere that you're meant to go. And it was, it was so hard for me. Because I always I was one of these people that wanted to control life into, submission, which is impossible. And I had to learn so intensely, stop, you cannot do that. And you need to trust. And there is a different path for you. And now, it's always easier to look back. In the moment, it's very difficult. Looking back now, we're 11 years post-accident for me. I can see now that my path needed to pivot on a 180 and that I was meant to do other things. And now through my own journey, I've been able to help thousands of other people. And that's that number is that number. It blows my mind to me because people around the world have heard my story. They've been educated about the same things that helped me. And I get messages all the time. Thank you so much, Danielle. Danielle, my life is improving in this way. And it's man, if I didn't go through that, I would not be in a position to help other people. And so often in life, I think we don't like the dark times. I have this behind me. It's a yin yang with the tree of life in it. And, it's to remind me about the polarity of this earth and that there is dark and light, there's day and night, there's love and hate, and that we get into trouble because we separate and we say, I prefer the light. I
want to hang out here all the time. Yeah.
Yeah. I just want to be here. Yeah. And the reality is, so then when the dark times come, we don't want to go there and we avoid it. But the challenges, the obstacles, the dark times, they're to teach us. That's when the roots of the tree get deep. It's when you start to learn about yourself. And if you don't have that experience, you cannot express as fully in the light times. And so it's this cycle. And I found this cycle in my life and I see it in so many other people's. And I think the biggest things as human beings that gets us in trouble is we get into duality where we say, well, I prefer this and I don't want that. So then when I get that, I'm miserable. And it's no, just accept what is as it is and figure out what to do with what showed up. What
And
lesson is it?
observe it for what it is. And I think we get stuck in the resistance. Like you use that analogy of the riptide, and, living in Florida, you live in Florida, I was at the beach a lot, and we'd have, unfortunately, people who would drown from some of the riptides, because they would try to swim against it rather than towards the shore. But sometimes it's just surrendering to it and saying, okay, I'm going to find my way out of it by just surrendering. And oftentimes that's where we get stuck in the dark times, is we're trying to fight the rip current, trying to fight the riptide, and it's just draining us of our energy, and it exhausts us.
Oh, it totally does. And I mean, I believe now that every challenge, every obstacle, it's a gift from the divine, and it's part of your soul's journey. It's a lesson that you were meant to learn in this lifetime. And that if you don't learn that lesson, it is only going to get louder, harder, bigger. You can't avoid it. Like, it's going to keep coming. So it's like, okay, step back, put your mind aside and all the chatter that the mind has to say about how it should be or ought to be or whatever, and just go, all right, if this is here as a gift and I'm meant to learn from it, what could it possibly be teaching me? And when you're in the throes of something like a brain trauma, where you have no idea what you're going to be able to do in the evening, if a friend could come over, because you don't know how you're going to feel, and you're very isolated and you're very alone. Like if I, in that situation, could ask these questions, like whatever you're going through, those of you listening, like I would just pause and ask, because something beautiful is being asked to blossom from this. And it's maybe something within yourself that you didn't realize you had. It's maybe something you've been holding on to that now you're going to be forced to let go of because it's not serving you. And I believe that, everything that's unfolding, it's like, okay, well, you learned that lesson. Like I look at it as a test. It's like, it's test day. You got an obstacle in your life, it's test day. So what's the test, right? How do you pass? It's when you learn the lesson. When you've mastered the lesson, you go on to the next thing, and life is going to keep
consciously aware of that lesson. You're like, okay, I see that I'm being tested on this. I know that this has been a spiral and that this has presented itself before. How am I going to handle this? It's funny because I posted today, instead of saying why is this happening to me? What is this teaching me? What can I learn from this? Right. And so it was funny. I was obviously tuning into the energy of the show even before we started recording, but it's hard. I call it the cosmic bitch slap, because sometimes it's like the universal. And I had that when I quantum leaped across the country, and then the universe was like, bam. And I'm like, oh, I'm in bed for 4 months. I can't move, but it was a lesson in teaching both of us how to improve our thoughts, because I'm sure you and I both, it sounds like when we were going through that tremendous amount of pain and in each of our journeys, we were beating ourselves up inside about it.
Oh, 100%. And you got to give yourself grace, and not judge yourself. Like, it is wicked what this mind will say, and just don't listen to it. It's ridiculous. I remember one of my teachers, Kamini Desai, who taught me yoga nidra. She would say, back in the days, people used to be worried about a tiger, and you had a very real threat, and it's that fight or flight response, and it was over because either you got eaten or you got away. And she said, in this day and age, we've invited the tiger into our living room and we let it just sit there. Yeah. And it is our thoughts. It is our mind. And it's like, it's constantly putting us in this stress state. And so get rid of the tiger. Like, just tell the thoughts enough, do yoga nidra, do things to help you release, forget, get past them, or just continually remind yourself, oh, I don't have to be that. I am not that. I am the thing witnessing that crazy thought. It can just go away. That's the human side of me. That's the ego mind. And when you have that context, it just makes it a lot easier, because without that context, I didn't have it before my accident. I had to learn it through that. So now when stuff comes into my world, I handle it. Like, when the pandemic started, I was like, oh, this is easy. Like, this is exactly,
I was like, not my reality. I'm good.
Yeah. I'm like, this is fine. So, life is, it's making you stronger. I look at it like going to the gym, right? I go to the gym all the time. I lift, and I have to lift heavier weights sometimes because I need to break down my muscles so it gets stronger. And in life, you got to run towards the hard times, because that's going to break you down mentally, emotionally, physically, to then build you up stronger.
Yeah.
And it's easy, I think, when people have that analogy of the gym, you go, oh yeah. But people, again, they just don't like the hard stuff. And I'm like, no, that's where the beauty is. Like, that is where so many amazing things happen, is when you allow yourself to go through the difficulty. It's like when you let yourself cry. Like, we avoid it, we push it down, we're like, no. But then as soon as we let ourselves, it's like, oh, feels so good.
It's so true. And so, Danielle, throughout this journey, you were guided to write an ebook called Mind Control. It's All in Your Head. You use these mind control techniques to, start creating your life. And so what is the biggest takeaway from your book for those out there who might be really resonating with this story, whether they're in bed like we were, beating themselves up, or they've started to move through it and understand that they can observe their thoughts? What can people take away from your book?
So I look at it, there's 4 things I share in that book, and realizing that you are more than your thoughts, having this lens to go, okay, like, I'm looking at life through the lens of my ego, through the lens of like limiting beliefs, etc. And if I recognize that, I can then start to change that. And I share this equation in the book, and it's your external life plus, the external world plus your internal response equals your reality. And so many people are trying to like control the external world. And I just got to tell you, all you need to worry about is your internal response to it. Like, let go of what's going on in the world, decide how you want to interact and be with it. And that's going to shape your life. And once you move through that, you then realize, wow, I can actually shape the external world through my inner world. And you like go in this full circle, but you can't get there. So many people try to leap right to, the law of attraction and vibration and all of that. But I'm like, no, you have to go through the fact of realizing what's limiting you now, what's causing you conflict with the world now, work through that. Then you're going to get into a space where you can attract it in. And I share because that was my journey, right? I went through this. And then, like I said, I got that phone call. Well, that phone call was from an acupuncturist that had come across a biotech discovery. And she said, Danielle, this stimulates the call for help so cells that are damaged can be repaired. And every client in my practice is having benefits, all of them different, some hormonal, some with their liver, some with their lungs, some with their skin. And she said, I think it would pass the blood-brain barrier and could help you.
Yeah, like nano. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like just amazing. So my mom intuitively was like, well, this is the answer. and I, the biologist, was like, I'm skeptical.
Let me research. I'm like you. Let me research it. Let me do the test run, and then I'll let you know. I'll
like get back to you on that one. Yeah. 6 months. This is what's wild, is like the answer was presented to me. It took me 6 months to see it. And it's so crazy. And I watch other people on this same thing. Like, I'm like, oh, the answer's here and you're not seeing it. Okay, in time. But 6 months, my mom used the product, had great results with her hands, went from not being able to make a fist, full range of motion. And
That's
I was
amazing.
like,
Mm-hmm.
it's a placebo. This is what my head said.
Yeah.
And then my dad uses it and doesn't have to wear his knee brace. He's worn that thing for 30 years, like my whole life he had worn it. And was within 10 days, his knee was doing so much better. And I was like, And then my dad's more analytical. So my dad starts pulling research and he's like, you didn't learn about this in school, Danielle, because it's too new of a field. And I went, and he said, yeah, this is a massive field of science. Like, this isn't some company that made something. This is a field of science. They're just the only ones that have stabilized it. And I was like, oh, got my analytical mind in there. And I thought, all right, well, so it can't hurt me and it might help me. Like, let's do it. So yeah, 6 months, I start using this. And within 90 days, like 3 months, I started to feel better than I'd felt in 2 years. I started to be able to think clearly again. I was getting like words out that I wanted to. I could focus. I didn't have the pounding in my head anymore. I started to get my health back. And it was just, it's so amazing looking back at how like I almost missed it. Like, thank goodness for my parents, because like, the universe, like, here on a silver platter, like, here it is.
And oftentimes that's what we're doing. I know as a healer, I'm like, I know this will help you, but people like, my mom's like that. I'm like, my dad's like, okay, give it to me. He's like the guinea pig, and then my mom's like, no, I'm not sure, so it's funny, but then she'll see my dad start to heal and then she'll want to be a part of it, so I think that's all a part of us challenging our limiting belief systems and seeing what works best for us. And let's talk a little bit about this technology that you talk about, the redox signaling, because this is really important when we're talking about minerals and trace minerals. And this is a whole thing that I talk about on my show, and really bringing in this quantum aspect of our healing and how we can regenerate our cells. And I talked about before we got on the show that I always tune into a frequency before I start recording. And the frequency that I tuned into for our show was 432 hertz. Well, what does 432 hertz do? It's DNA activation and recellular generation. And so there's a reason why many of us are being guided toward regenerating our cells, not only to heal us on a physical level, but also to expand our light body and our Merkaba. There's a whole nother aspect to it. So can you talk a little bit about redox signaling and what it is?
I want to talk 3D world and I want to talk 5D world.
Let's do it. And even higher than 5D. Let's go. There's no limit here.
Okay. So from the 3D, from the physical body, from the like biology side, this is fascinating. So redox stands for reductants and oxidants. They are the little signaling molecules that every cell in the body uses. So when you have damage, like say you cut yourself, like you wash, it heals. Like, how did it know to do that? Well, every cell talks, and it talks through electron transfer. Reductants give an electron, oxidants receive one. And so when there's damage, this alert goes out, lets the system know that there's been damage, and then the body comes and repairs the area. Same thing with expression of our genes, right? There's a signal that comes to the membrane, and then a gene is expressed. It's all electron transfer. As we get older, we make less of our own redox molecules. And so our signaling in our system is weaker. It's just part of the aging process. And so the call for help isn't as loud. We notice that as we get older, like we don't rebound after a workout as fast. We have stuff that becomes chronic. Like we don't heal as fast after a surgery as we get older. These things happen. So this company, ASEA, they figured out how to stabilize these redox molecules outside your body so you can replenish your body supply. And what that means for every living thing, we're talking humans, animals, plants, everything talks with redox. And if you can replenish the supply, you're going to help damaged cells repair faster. And you're going to turn back on things that the environment is turning off. Your immune function, your hormone modulation, et cetera. These things get switched off by our environment, switching it back on. So that's what happened physically with me drinking this. It goes in your body where it needs to go. So it's not like it's designed for brain injury.
It naturally knows where to go. It's similar to, it reminds me of, I've been taking Ormus for years, orbitally rearranged monoatomic elements. Jesus talks about it in the Bible. It's called mana, and you can live off it. You don't have to eat food. It's like gives you the amount of nutrients and minerals that you need. And so this reminds me of that because it goes into the quantum, it gets into that deep cellular structure within the body, and it heals where it needs to heal. It's almost like it has a consciousness to it.
It does. Listen, people that are, so the biologist, Danielle, right, entered with this, and then so much has opened up for me. And I've met the most incredible people that do quantum healing, that do all sorts of things, and they have abilities that I don't have. And I've had people say, Danielle, like, so that blue bottle, that's the ASEA. I've had people walk into my room and say, what is that? Because the energy of that met me before your energy met me.
That's
and
funny.
I'm like, whoa.
That's powerful.
Right? It's sitting there. It's just potential. All it is potential energy. I had somebody that uses the BioWell device that picks up energy, and he brought it out to the plant. And he put it on there. It kept knocking it offline because the energy was so high in this place. And anyway, so
it's like a crystal. It's like structured water. It's uses sacred geometry.
Well, talking about sacred geometry, I had a friend of mine who she sees sacred geometry, and when I met her, we got on the call. She tapped into this, and she started telling me about it. And she started telling me about the company, the founders, how they made it, how it was intuited down. Like she started telling me everything about it. And I'm like, who is this woman? What is she doing? And then she drank it, right? She got it, she bought it, she drank it. She called me after her first 2 ounces. And she said, Danielle, do you have any idea what this stuff does? And I started laughing because I said, from my level of conscious awareness, yes. From yours, no. I have no idea. This is what she told me. She said, Danielle, what happened when I drank this was it shifted my cells from a carbon state to a
To
crystalline
a
state.
crystalline state. Oh, okay. That's what Ormus does too. Very cool. Okay.
Okay, there you go. Yeah. And so she said, Danielle, that's like when infants come here, they're in a crystalline state. She said, it's no wonder you see such incredible things happening in people's bodies and the physical being able to repair so quickly. And, others have told me just the most amazing things. Like they feel that the calcification on their pineal gland is going down, that they're feeling more connected. I have a lot of people that, like yourself, are gifted, and they say, my gifts are stronger. It's like I'm able to connect in on a deeper level. I have some people that call this their ascension supplement because it's like helping, prep the body for this. And it's been so interesting to kind of get acquainted with and work with people more in the spiritual realm that understand this, that are more connected, and see how they're accessing this, and like how it's getting the physical body to it's raising its vibration. I believe there's consciousness in there, just liquefied into a form that we can take it, on this planet. That's how I look at it. I can't prove it as a scientist, but like talking in that realm, that's how I see it. And it's so profound. I tell people, like, I see in a sea of glow on people. It's what I call it, because you just,
it expands their light body, their Merkaba.
Yeah.
It'll make their aura stronger. Yeah.
And they vibrate at a different level. It's just like, it's amazing to see. And I believe that every being should get this. I believe we should be using it with our pets. I believe we should be using it with our flowers that are in our house, just help them be more vibrant longer. Like, this is such a no-brainer because it can't hurt you. Like, there is nothing that you could do that could cause a toxic buildup. You could drink a bottle of it in a day and your body will just revert it into saline.
It reminds me of Bach flower remedies, because I work with those, and people will say, what if I chug the whole bottle? I'm like, it's just going to work the way it's meant to work. Yeah.
Yeah. It's so nice when we have our hands on these things, because we think about the Western world, and like you were in that world for a while. I grew up in it. My grandfather was a Westernly trained doctor. And so there's so much there that's incredible, right? When you have trauma, like that's who you want. I don't want a Bach flower remedy. Like I want the, right? Like there's some things I want from Western medicine, but 90% of stuff, we just need to talk to the body. We need to give the body, because the body has the intelligence to get back to its state, and we talk about DNA activation, like this is researched to activate and create higher genetic expression on various genetic pathways. And so I'm just really excited about where we're going in the next decade, like with the incredible tools that we have, the stuff you're aware of that you've taught me about today, like things like this coming out there. To me, they're quantum healing modalities. It's like
they are. So what I do is I can actually tune into the frequency of that product and assimilate it in a quantum healing session with people, because everything is a frequency, right? Everything's based off of sound and light. So what I do in my sessions is I will eliminate heavy metals. I will activate DNA. I tune into the Bach flowers. If I intuitively pick up on one that they need, I will send it into their cells. And so when we're working in that theta state, which is usually what you're in yoga nidra, really, you get into that theta state, that's when we can mold things and we can manipulate things, because you're in a very impressionable state. And so you can't see it, but my hairs on my arms are up, and I know it's probably from that product just blasting me with it. So I don't even have to physically take products anymore. I can hold them and I get the frequency kind of assimilated into my body. And I know that this is probably more of a higher realm type of way of dealing with things, but versus, I think it's all subconscious. Many of us in the third dimension are inundated with heavy metals, which anchor us. They hold us deeper into the third dimension. And it makes it harder for us to activate our pineal gland, to activate our intuitive gifts. So, what it sounds like this product is doing is it's eliminating those heavier metals that are like an anchor holding us down, and allowing us to expand and allowing us to raise our vibration and our frequency in a way that will then allow us to open up to our intuitive abilities. And so I'm a firm believer in cleansing the body of heavy metals, because I started doing this 10, 15 years ago. And that's when my abilities started to really amp up because I was inundated, and we get inundated from our food, our water, from the air we breathe, from, there's so many ways we're getting heavy metals in, depending on what we're using in our home too. So it's really neat to see that this is also, it's almost like there are certain, and you probably know this from a biological standpoint, there are certain minerals that will transmute certain, like boron will transmute fluoride or whatever. So there's certain things that will, when you put it in the body, it will literally kind of stagnate. I don't know what the word is, but it'll just kind of make it mute, it'll just wash it out, I guess.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's really cool to be able to do that, because I told my friends, it's like, I'm at a level now, I don't even need supplements anymore. I just tune into the frequency of it, and then immediately I get it. I can use sacred geometry, and I can muscle test and say, what am I lacking? I can literally take something, put it in the sacred geometry, and it will activate within my DNA structure. And so I think but not everybody's at this level. Not everybody's at this point, right? Because it's all part of the subconscious mind. And many are, many, like my dad, he's a supplement junkie. I'm like, Dad, you're taking too many. You've got to back off a little bit. But there are things, it's all multidimensional, the way that we're healing, right? It's like, we've got to many of us want to do the energetic healing and all this, but our physical body's like, hey, wait for me. I'm in a third dimensional state. I'm in a much denser energy, and I haven't caught up yet. Right. And so that's where people will get stuck, and then they feel all this chronic pain and disease in their body.
Tanya, you have stated that better than anybody. I mean, it's so true. And because people will say to me, well, I study Joe Dispenza's work, or I do his meditations, and like, I should be able to spontaneously heal myself. And I'm like, yes, but your physical body is so dense right now. You're in so much pain right now. Like, you're not able to access that frequency as well. So what if you do those things, and it's as if you're coming down this way, and then you help the physical body, and it can reach up this way. And when the two come together, it'll be amazing.
Yeah. And your thoughts your conscious thoughts may say, I'm healing, but your subconscious are like, no, you're not. Well, the moment you start taking certain supplements or doing redox signaling, your body says, oh, I am doing it. Then your subconscious says, oh, we are doing it. And then they begin to align. And so, and we talked about placebo very briefly, but a lot of it is, I think I do EFT tapping. We've got in our physical body, we've got to do the process over and over again in order for sometimes our subconscious to say, okay, this is a routine now. I get it. Now I'm on this frequency. I'm here.
Well said.
And it takes, and it could be with anything. It could be with our health, could be with our relationships. It could be with our careers. And so I want to talk briefly about this, because I know not only have you helped a bunch of people with their health, but you've also built a very successful international business, helping people expand their businesses as well. And so I want to talk about this, because many of us who are leaving the 3D realities are beginning to be guided into creating these higher frequency businesses, so to speak. They're being guided to be more in flow. And I'll tell you, it has not been an easy process. It's hard to break down those limiting belief systems of, I get a paycheck every week, or I have benefits, or I have this, I have that when you're in that third dimensional, kind of structure, to say, okay, I surrender to it all. And now I'm just going to see where I float and where I go. Can you talk a little bit more about this? Because I'm sure you're working with clients right now that they're probably going through these transitions. And I feel like I'm a little bit more ahead of the game, but there's times I stumble. It's like, oh man, where's the abundance? Or what is my block? What is my limiting belief here? So I want to talk a little bit about this, because for those who have tuned in this long, they're probably on this frequency where they can really assimilate this information.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting. Friends of mine, you know them, Jay and April Mata, they have Spiritually Raw. They call it the 5D economy. They said, Danielle, what you've done, what you've created, what you're helping others create, 5D economy, where, you can only become abundant by helping other people become abundant. And it's interesting because after my accident, I wasn't able to work. And it felt so frustrating because I had the desire to work, but I had the physical inability to be able to. And so I couldn't earn an income. And when I started to get healthy again, and, you know, I had this hope again for my future, I could not shake this feeling of, well, going back to the 9 to 5 is not secure, even though everybody's telling me that's the way to go get a job, or go, you know, get a graduate degree and get a better job. And like, everyone's telling me, go that way, go that way, go that way. And inside of me, I'm going, screaming like, no, Danielle, because if you lose your health again, you can't earn money that way. Like, you need to create something. You need to create something that will live beyond you, that can exist, you know, in your absence. Like, you got to create it. And it was crazy to have like the mind saying one thing, the heart saying something different, to have all these people I respect telling me one thing, everything I'd known in life up to that point.
Which was your external reality, right? That was your external reality mirroring back to you.
And my inner world said, no.
It's like you had this battle going on inside of you. Believe me, I've been there.
So I said, okay, I'm gonna figure this out. And I aligned with the Redox technology because it was through word of mouth that you could get it. So someone couldn't go get this stuff on a store shelf. And I thought, well, hang on a second. This has been put in my life. I've got a degree in biology. I know how to teach because I was a teacher prior to my accident. And I've had this amazing result with this biotech discovery. And I thought, well, I'm meant to teach about it, you know, and if I align myself with them and I share it, like, that's the only way it's going to reach people. Otherwise it's dead in the water. And I thought, okay, I can do this, but it's like, you're starting a business. And I'm like, I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to market. I don't know how to talk to people. I'm very introverted. Like, I don't want to go meet new people.
Hey, I can totally resonate with all of that.
Yeah. And my heart is like, share your story, share your story. So I remember Googling networking, like, how do I meet people? And something popped up in my local community called BNI, which is like the most hardcore networking. So I went to my first meeting, but here's the crazy thing. The guy that was signing guests in, he's called the visitor host. He and his wife changed my life. He signed me in and he said, I've heard of ASEA before. Now, I met thousands of people networking. Nobody had heard of ASEA before they met me. This man, first man I meet, has heard of it. And he says, you don't have a team around here, do you? I said, no. He said, you ever done anything like this before? I said, no. He said, why don't you come Saturday mornings? My wife and I train our team on how to, you know, they did Primerica. They worked with financial services. They said, we train our team how to meet people, how to build a business. We'll teach you. And I said, really? And he goes, yeah. So I showed up and his wife was like, why is she here? You know, what's going on? And I kept showing up to the point where like, they just adopted me right in for 2 years. I mean, they taught me how to do business, and they taught me for free with no expectation that there was ever any payback. And
what a synchronicity.
And because of that, it's like they baked inside of me, like, you need to give what you know to others. You need to help others, and it will come around. Because I always said to them, guys, through helping me, you've helped thousands, and you've not gotten any of the benefit of that. And they said, no, we've seen you blossom. Like, you're the one that did it. Like, we didn't do it. I'm like, yeah, okay, but I want to repay you. And eventually, years later, I met someone that I connected them to, and it has taken them to the stratosphere. And I'm like, finally, I got to repay. But they never expected it, you know, but it's just like, to me, that's the energy exchange that should happen. So
it's funny. I call myself a quantum connector. It sounds like you are too. It's like you meet people and then you put it in your Rolodex in the back of your mind. And then as you go about your life, you say, oh, connect, oh, connect, oh, connect. And it's like it's almost like how I envision the neural pathways in the brain, just these little connectors firing off. So that's really cool and I think many of us are doing that, especially through the podcasting world. I know that's been my experience.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And it's beautiful to make those connections happen because, you know, I think everything's a divine appointment. Like, there's a reason you and I met. I don't know what it is yet, but like, it'll unfold. It'll become clear. And it's so exciting to now, like, I go into every interaction with that. So that's what I taught through just what happened with that individual. Every single time I would meet somebody out, I would always have the expectation that something beautiful was going to unfold from our meeting. And these are like, when I talk about the spiritual laws to success, I mean, this is the kind of thing. I was so present with everybody that I met that I didn't have what I wanted or what I was trying to accomplish. I was just there for them, received them. And then it became clear, you know, where to navigate the conversation. I always accepted everything just as it was in my business. You know, there were times where it's like, no, I want more sooner. But it was like, I had to learn. I had to become, like, I would not have been able to handle the influx of a lot of people before I had systems in place. So I had to do the systems, like build it before they come type of mentality, work from the end in mind. And so there's a lot of things that I learned along the way. And now I'm in a position, we're 8 years on in my business. My team did 2.2 million in sales last year. Like, we've created the systems and structures so that anyone can step in and succeed. And it's so exciting to me to know, like, people have an option, because I think so many people feel super stuck in their world, in that, like, they're caught in this 9 to 5, they're caught
One
with the
paycheck coming in. Yeah.
yeah, and it's crazy. And it's like, how do I escape? You know, I was pulled from life. Like, it was a forced escape for me. But
And
you
I
know,
sort of was, but I randomly frolicked out of it. I don't really know what I did, but
thank God you made it. But now it's like, I feel like I have the ability to say to somebody, look, if you give me chunk time for me throughout your week, I can teach you how to, as time is passing, create an option for yourself where in a couple of years, you can let go of this life that's making you feel stagnant. I don't promise people overnight success, because I don't think it's feasible. I think you have to change who you are. You have to become a different person. You got to get yourself in the right, circumstances. I always say, look, your seed of potential is sitting in you. And if you put it in the right soil, it will grow. And right now, your seed is screaming at you that you don't feel fulfilled, that there's, that there's more to life than this. You're not sure where to go. And I'm like, I have fertile soil. Like, come over here, get in this soil. We will help you grow. And what you do with that, like, you might work with me for a couple of years and then you go on and do something else. I don't care. Like, I just want to support people in getting their potential, like, out of them, because it's like people are sleepwalking through life, Tanya, and it is so.
and I was there. I was a sleepwalker through life at one point. Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
Like, I remember every day I'd get up at the same time and do the same thing and do that. And I thought, I am on autopilot every day of my life, and I couldn't have been more miserable.
Yeah.
Now I wake up and I'm like, all right, universe, what do we got in store today? Who am I going to meet? What interaction am I going to have? How much money's flowing in my bank? I mean, it's just really fun to interact and to collaborate, to co-create with that higher power. It's amazing.
Yeah. And I think what's crazy is that in life, we think it's normal to feel what you were just describing, because everyone else we're looking at and we're surrounded by is doing the same thing. They're on the same grind. But it's like, I got pulled out of life. I watched it and I went, I'm not going back there. And then I found out, wow, there's a whole lot of other people out here too. And there's a whole lot of other people that are creating their life, and they're learning to co-create, like yourself, like the people that I've met in my world. And it's what's so beautiful. And that was the one thing unintentionally that happened because of my business, is I now have an international network of people.
Yeah.
I have friends in Australia, over in, the UK, in Singapore.
So cool.
It's like amazing. And they're like-minded. And it's like, it's beautiful to know this. And I was just talking with a friend of mine earlier, like, hey, maybe I'm going to come over to where she is and hang out and explore that part of the world. And it's because of business that we have the connection.
It sounds like I'm doing that with my podcast, because I was guided to start it. And I made a comment to a friend the other day. I think I'm making a network. I think I'm making a network with all these people. I don't see the full puzzle together yet, but I have the puzzle pieces, and I'm just being guided by my intuition to just kind of go with the flow and meet all these people. So it's funny you say that, because that just validates what I was thinking this week. Because I'm like, where am I going with this? What is going on? But that validates it. It's all about the network connections. Absolutely.
It is. And you never know where they're going to unfold or how. And because you, like you said, you're a connector, you keep people in the back of your mind, like, stuff's going to start unfolding. It'll be cool to watch.
It is cool, because when I work with people, I'll have my Rolodex will go on. I'm like, oh, this book. I had a guest. They have this book, and I refer a book, to them. So it's like funny how that takes place, but also on a higher frequency level, I feel that I'm connecting with all these light workers all over the world, and we're just lighting up this earth grid. Like, every time we connect, we're activating one another. We're sending, giving and receiving energy, downloads, uploads, whatever you want to call them, back and forth with one another. And it's just lighting up the planet, because like you said, I've got most of my guests have been in all these different countries, and it's super fun to meet people from all over the world in the comfort of my own home. Right. So, or in this beautiful meadow for those of you who are watching, but So yeah, I think as we meet one another, we start to put the pieces of the puzzle together, because there was a time you mentioned how you're introverted, and I got off my show the other day and the gal goes, "Wow, you're really extroverted." I said, "Actually, I'm like 80% introverted, 20% extroverted." What you see in my show, because I was, back in my 20s, I was much more extroverted, but it was draining me. I felt very, burnt out. But I do feel like I'm starting to learn to balance that introvert extrovert. And so just giving people a platform to be able to come on and speak. But it's really funny how people will immediately think, oh, because watching you on your Instagram and watching you, I'm like, she's super extroverted, So it's really funny you said no. So I'm like, yeah, she's like me now. I get it. I see it. I see where you're coming from. So that's really neat. But there's many of us who are coming together to connect on a larger scale that we probably don't even recognize what we're doing right now.
I totally, completely agree. And it's really funny because my friend that I was talking about messaged me while we were having that conversation. It said, definitely come. She's in the UK. So that's just like, anyway, weird.
And that's just synchronicity in itself and how it works itself out. And so Danielle, this has been an amazing talk. I mean, we've talked about healing. We've talked about overcoming surmountable challenges. We've talked about how to observe our thoughts, and also how to start transitioning your business. And so I really value all of the work that you've done. I know, because it's not easy when you go through such a jarring event in your life, and then you're stuck in this place of confusion on where do I go from here? And you clearly knew that's not the life for me. That third dimensional is not for me. And I got to that point too, where the light bulb went off and said, you're trying to round peg, square hole this, and it's just not working for you anymore. And so I think, my intention for the show is to provide value to all of those out there who either you're struggling with your health or maybe with your wealth. I mean, either way. But, just really check out Danielle's information. So can you share with us a little bit about how people can connect with you and some of the services that you provide?
Sure. If you go over to Instagram, easy place, it's just my name, Danielle Matthews _ at either end. And I've got lots of stuff, the links in my bio. It's me there. If you want to chat with me, just send me a message. I love talking with people any way I can help. And my website is brainbodyself.com. You can get my ebook there. There's free yoga nidra practices there. Information on the Redox is there. Whatever you need. If anything resonated, I would also just reach out. If I can help you take a step on your path, I would love to help.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming on the show and spending your time with us today. Thank you so much, Danielle.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Tanya.
You deserve to navigate your life in alignment with health, happiness, and abundance. To learn more about the services that I provide, including Beyond Quantum Healing Hypnosis, EFT tapping, and the Emotion Code, visit my website at www.theexistentialempath.com.